was lying in my bed back at my parents' house in Kennesaw, Georgia, when I looked up. What did I see? Stars. About 15 glow-in-the-dark plastic stars I had previously taped above my bed when I was little. Why do we do this as kids? Is it because it's cool? Well, yeah, of course it's cool. But is it something else? Is it because it's comforting? Is it because we used to look at space with a sense of hope, not fear? Something that tells us there's always light when it's dark. All we have to do is look up. After a few minutes of reminiscing, I realized that I placed those stars on my ceiling a few weeks after my father and I experienced our first meteor shower. We were camped out at Kennesaw Mountain National Park, illegally of course, and together we watched about 200 beams of light streak across the night sky. Incredible. But aside from this celestial fireworks show, there remained one forgotten rock set in the cosmic stage above my eyes. The moon. Often people forget we've put a man on that rock before. Multiple times, actually. But what happened? Why did we stop going? To answer these questions, I want to go back in time. I want to talk about the origins of NASA. The 1960s were a tumultuous time for the world, and in particular the United States. We were in a Cold War with the Soviet Union, where the idea of high ground became critical between the world's two superpowers. The Soviets beat us to this high ground with the release of Sputnik, which was a hollowed-out casing of an intercontinental ballistic missile. Now, what does this mean? Well, Eisenhower created NASA in response, and we go to the moon about 10 years later in 1969. After the Apollo missions, everyone had projected a mission to Mars and neighboring planets by the mid-1980s. Now I want to bring you back to present day. The year is 2015. Where are the manned moon missions? Where are the manned Mars missions? The greatest human achievement of recent history happened 45 years ago. Why doesn't this bother anyone? See, people failed to realize the true reason why people went to space in the first place. Fear. Once Russia proved it could not land a man on the moon, we stopped going to the moon. We did not leave Earth because of some cosmic manifest destiny, but purely a geopolitical driving force. We wanted the new high ground. The saddest part of this whole tragedy are the forgotten intangible effects that NASA had on the economy, innovation, and culture of the early 1970s. If that's all right, I'll remind you. NASA made that which was impossible possible during a time of global disorder. 45 years ago, we made magic happen on a scale only rivaled by science fiction. It was a time that favored the future and imagination blossomed. Society welcomed ambitious societal innovations just as it did with the space program. During the Apollo 8 mission, which was the first time we had left Earth and circled around the moon, we took this, Earthrise. The mission's purpose was to discover the moon, when in reality, we rediscovered home. See, the Earth was no longer mapped out with countries or borders like we see in our classrooms. There were no longer racial or religious warring states. It was one team, one home, and one perspective. From this, we saw the Clean Air Act, formation of Earth Day, the Environmental Protection Agency, the formation of NOAA. Industrial giants like Pittsburgh began city-scaled cleanups, all in 1970. 1971, Greenpeace was created. 1972, the Clean Water Act. 1973, Endangered Species Act. 1974, the U.S. Wind Energy Program. Now, there are many more, but I will stop there. NASA is an organization like none other on this planet. It is a crucible for the dreams and dreamers of our future. The Apollo 11 mission birthed an entire generation of scientists, technologists, engineers, and mathematicians. My father was born in 1956, so around the time of the Apollo 11 mission, he was around 13 years old. And wow, did he love space. NASA had captured the heart and mind of a young boy seeking acceptance for a future in math and science. Many years later, he graduated with a degree in aerospace engineering and is currently working for Lockheed Martin. I can assure you that anyone in these fields, like my dad, would attribute the Apollo mission to the moon as one reason why they joined one of these STEM fields. Unlike the Human Genome Project, the Large Hadron Collider, or even the Internet, the landing a man on another world transcends both generations and culture. The gravity of this achievement is just as effective to a fourth grader as it is to a tribesman in Africa. I would like to go back in time once again. Growing up, I always marveled at the night sky and grew jealous of those who had personally traveled the cosmos before me. Once I got older, however, I understood the challenges associated with manned spaceflight, and I too sunk into the status quo philosophy of, let's just send a robot to do the job. Now let me ask you something. When you look back at the newspapers of 1969, whom do you see on the front page? Whom do you see in the limos and buses at the ticker tape parades? Who are the heroes of the missions to space and the moon? Is it the device that took a picture of Neil Armstrong as he took his first steps on the lunar surface? Or how about the $2.5 billion toy car we have on Mars? Did you even know we had one there? No. It's the astronaut. It's the human being who traveled 238,000 miles to that tiny gray rock we see in the sky. It's the grown-up boy who marveled at those who traveled before him as he smiles taking his first steps on Martian soil. Yes, manned spaceflight is extremely risky, but that's why we need our government to account for that risk when the private sector cannot. This brings me back to my original question. Why did we stop going? I want to show you where the nation's greatest agency is heading. In 1966, NASA's budget represented about 4.4% of a penny on a tax dollar, which, by the way, is more than plenty. Do you want to know what NASA's current budget is? 0.4 of a penny on a tax dollar. I'll say that again. 0.4% of a penny on a tax dollar. Now, I really want to put this in perspective for you in two ways. First, if we look at the Statue of Liberty, from the bottom of her foot to the top of her head, it's about 111 feet. 0.4% of that is almost the height of her pinky toe. Here's another one. The entire 56-year running budget of NASA is still billions of dollars less than the 2008 TARP financial bank bailout. Our civilization's greatest medium for birthing the thinkers and innovators of our future generations is currently underfunded. Politicians see space as a special interest group, when in reality they fail to see NASA's incomparable investment to innovation, culture, the economy, and history. They fail to see the true driver of our country's future. I want to close with one of the most common arguments against NASA. We need to worry about our own planet before we spend money on other planets. This is a respectable statement. After all, Earth is our home. We are that sole pale blue dot afloat in our cosmic neighborhood. However, with this statement, it is imperative that we continue to seek horizons. Reason number one is short and sweet. If you like making money, space is for you. Space is projected to be the first trillion-dollar industry with lucrative opportunities in asteroid mining and space transportation. it truly is something of increasing value. Reason number 2 hits home for me a little more, and I hope it does for you as well. It is conservatively estimated that there are this many stars in the known universe. That's 1 with 29 zeros. Again, a conservative estimate. Now, to me, it is naive to think that we are alone in these zeros. It's almost unfathomable for me to think there's not a distant planet that is just far enough away from its sun to house multicellular organisms or potentially intelligent life. With that said, do you want to be the ant or the one who holds the magnifying glass? As we continue to destroy our planet's atmosphere, deplete it of its finite natural resources, flood our coastal cities, and wage global-scaled wars, we must ask ourselves, how much more can our home take? See, by becoming a multi-planetary species, we secure our very own insurance policy. Just as you insure your automobile or home, just as a stockbroker diversifies their portfolio, we must do the same with our home, our planet. I'll end with a great quote from Carl Sagan. Since in the long run, every planetary society will be endangered by impacts from outer space, every surviving civilization is obliged to become spacefaring. Not because of some exploratory or romantic zeal, but for the most practical reason imaginable: staying alive. Let's remove our ceilings and find comfort in the stars once again. Thank you.